Petros and Money, AM 570 LA Sports. We're live everywhere on the iHeart Radio app. Going to Fox Sports Radio tonight. Full 4-hour show. Same tomorrow. We'll be back to basketball on Thursday. And, of course, all weekend long, you get the great college football action and NFL Sundays. But, P, it's been a big week in baseball because we got general manager meetings and owner meetings and free agency and all of that. It never stops. The train keeps chugging along.
And there is great hunger for Dodger content. And, man, do we have it. Ross Porter, legendary Dodger broadcaster, voice is synonymous with decades of great Dodger teams and memories and fun. And he's got a new book out, forward by Peter O'Malley, called The Ross Porter Chronicles. And this is just volume 1. We have a signed copy. And it's great because it's a bunch of really, really interesting transcribed interviews with everybody from Dusty Baker to Clayton Kershaw, Ron Say,
Vin Scully,
Rick
Dempsey.
And then there are QR codes, and then you can go to YouTube and then watch the interview.
Yeah, you snap the QR code. It takes you to the YouTube interview. So it's an interactive book.
So very innovative, very cool. From the big, strong man from Oklahoma, a fabulous and legendary play-by-play man and our friend, joining us on your Southern California Toyota dealer celebrity hotline. It is the author of the new book, The Ross Porter Chronicles, Ross Porter. What's cracking, Ross? How are you?
Petros and Money, nice to talk to you again, and thank you for giving me a chance to talk about this book.
We're looking forward to it. What gave you the idea to do this? What made you think the interviews and all that stuff would work? I mean, it certainly works. What was the inspiration behind it all?
Well, you know, I have 2 sports websites, and one of them is Ross Porter Sports. I call it videos. It's YouTube. And on that site, I have 220 interviews that I've done over 50 years. And people said to me, you got to do something with that before you go. And so I said, okay, I'll think about it. And I got a co-producer who said, yeah, let's do it. And so we worked on that, I'd say, 5 months to get it ready. I chose 24 different interviews and put them together and tried to get a good range of players. And I'm very, very thrilled with the reception to it so far. I thank you guys very much for giving me a chance because it's very simple. All you have to do to order it is go to RossPorterSports.com.
Perfect. Ross, what's the you mentioned 200 plus. Look, anyone can schedule an interview, but very few can make it compelling, can get the subject to open up, to share, to provide things that others want to hear or see or read. So what was your secret? What led to you being able?
That's a very good question, and I thought my favorites were Vin Scully, chapter 1, 21 minutes, and I thought it was probably the best interview I ever did because I got to him talking about things that he'd never talked about before. And the other one that I like Mike Scioscia, because Mike Scioscia, I told a story about Mike Scioscia that shows you the character of the man, and it's very good. Now, you guys mentioned, and I'm glad you did this, that the QR code is on there. And I want to say in Chapter 4, I have Ted Williams and Mike Piazza. Ted talking to me at Vero Beach after he talked to the Dodger players one year, and then explaining very well what you should do to be a good hitter. And then, this was interesting. When Mike Piazza was 16 years old, Ted Williams was in his hometown in Pennsylvania to do a book signing. He had some extra time. He went out to Piazza's home, and Mike's dad had built him a batting cage. And Mike got in the batting cage, and Ted Williams stood there and analyzed his hitting. And that's on there when you go to the QR code to get it after you see the 2 interviews. Because right after the Ted Williams interview, I interviewed Mike about that day. And so you have the 2 interviews, and then you have Ted Williams talking to him, and it's very interesting. Mike gave me permission to use that, out of the Piazza family film file, and I thought it was an outstanding part of the show, of the book.
Unbelievable, the breadth and the depth of all of this stuff. The Ross Porter Chronicles, Volume 1, the Dodger years. And I'd have to imagine, Ross, that, I mean, like the NCAA tournament, this was really hard. There had to be a lot of interviews on the bubble that didn't make it in. How hard was it to make that decision? And obviously, Vince Scully's going in there. If you can get Piazza's permission, that's going in there. But, I mean, how much stuff didn't go in there that you got to do another one of?
Petros, and that's a very good point you bring up, because I didn't realize when I started this that I needed to get permission from people to run the interviews and to run any kind of film of them. And that took a while. I mean, when you have to contact Sandy Koufax and say, can I use this? And you wait a few days, and he writes back and says, yeah, go ahead and use it. Same thing with Piazza and with others. It takes a while to put it all together, and then you do it. And what I did was I just took all of the Dodger interviews I had and said, what would be the most interesting one for the fans to read about? And that's how I came up with the 24. And Clayton Kershaw was one of the last ones I did. And of course, he's a first-time Hall of Famer.
Yeah, no doubt. And when you mention Kershaw, Ross, we think about the greatest player of his era, greatest pitcher of his era. And I was going to ask you, because I grew up, in the era of This Week in Baseball, and you'd get those great interviews, and you look forward to, whatever star they were going to sit down with that week, Ozzie Smith, Johnny Bench, Steve Garvey. And it was always, you felt like it was very thoughtful. Does it feel like in the age of these players who now control their own media, that the art of the interview, that they're just not willing to kind of share the way they used to share with you? You were their vehicle to kind of share their personality with the fans.
That's right, buddy. And I never had anybody really give me trouble about that. The only thing I remember one time was I wanted to interview Jay Howell in New York before a game. And Jay's a wonderful guy. And he said, Ross, I want to tell you something. I don't do pregame interviews because I think it'll jinx me that night. So I can't give you the interview. That was the only one I thought that was really out of the way. But you're right, and these guys have become so good at doing interviews, and they do so many of them that they're very polished about it. You still get the guys that say, "Well, I was thinking," but you don't have many of those.
The great Ross Porter with us. The book is called The Ross Porter Chronicles. We got a copy here. It's fantastic. You mentioned Sandy Koufax. I know you don't want to put any interview ahead of any other, but obviously a special place in Dodger fans' hearts and arguably, one of the most interesting players in baseball history. Can you share anything with the people? Just give them a little taste of what they're going to get in the book and then what they're going to see.
Sandy wanted to talk about the fact that when he pitched, the ballparks were different then than they are today. And he said, I like old ballparks. And he then started talking about, I asked him about the fact that, you have long fingers. And what does that do for you as a pitcher? And he talked about that, and he was very, very accurate as usual. But it was good. And what I did, guys, was, I devoted it all to the Dodgers in the first one. We plan to have a second one, and I'm already working on that. I've got Johnny Bench. I've got Eric Harris. I've got Jerry West. I've got Tom Brokaw. I've got Willie Mays, Ernie Banks.
Wow.
And it just goes on and on, and I got more to do.
Well, I would imagine that that's intertwined with your time as a sports anchor here in L.A. Ross, if you could maybe tell our younger audience about how you got into the booth to call Dodger games for almost 30 years.
28 years, that's right, Petros. And what was happening, I was at Channel 4 doing the sports, 6 o'clock and 11 o'clock news, and very happy working with people like Tom Brokaw and Tom Snyder and Kelly Lang and Bryant Gumbel. And Fred Clare said to me the day that Tommy Lasorda was named manager and Walt Olson retired, He said, I want to ask you a question. I said, sure. He said, Vin's going to go to CBS and do a lot of work, and we need a third announcer. And I just wanted to ask you, do you have anybody you want to recommend? I took either 1 or 2 seconds, and I said, me. He told my wife, Lynn, later, I set him up because I wanted him all along. And so he said, I need an audition tape. I said, Fred, I haven't done a baseball game since I was at OU 20 years ago. Well, it was the last 4 days of the 1976 season, and what had happened was the Dodgers and the Padres were going to play at Dodger Stadium, but they were both out of the race. So it was Albuquerque versus Hawaii. We worked it out. This was a Wednesday. Couldn't do it Wednesday. We were too late in the day. Thursday was an off day. Friday, I had to catch a red-eye that night to Buffalo to do an NFL game on Sunday. But we worked it out that after I did the 6 o'clock sports on Channel 4 in Burbank, I went over to Dodger Stadium with my tape recorder. They sneaked me in the back of the press box, put me in a dark room, and I was to do the audition tape. My thought was I'll do about a half an inning to warm up, and then I'll back it up and do it for good. Well, I did the half inning, and I backed it up. I thought, I may be better. I might be worse. This is pretty representative. So I took the tape, gave it to somebody who gave it to somebody else who gave it to Fred, and I was off. And he said, when you get back from Buffalo, call me Monday morning. So I called him. He said, we like your tape. We're down to 2 tapes, you and another guy. We're going to send the 2 tapes out to Vin Scully's home and let him listen because he's going to make the ultimate choice. So hours went by. Phone rang. Fred said, Vin likes your tape because he says it's closer to what he and Jerry Doggett are doing than the other guy. So on a Wednesday, I was thrilled at Channel 4. On Monday, I had a new career.
Wow.
I mean, I know it's an incredible story, Ross, and we're just sitting here with our mouths open listening to you tell it. Can you tell us who the other guy was?
That's the way it went.
That's the way it
I
went.
had 28 wonderful years, and it could not have been better. I was with the greatest baseball announcer, I think greatest sportscaster of all time. I always said I thought he was the most popular man in California.
Yeah.
And a funny thing, guys, at one time he was called to a luncheon and asked by a party leader of one of the political parties that they'd like to have him run for governor. And he said, well, give me 24 hours to think about it. He told me I knew in 2 minutes I wasn't going to do it. But I called him back the next day and said, thank you very much, but I'm very honored to be a Dodger announcer. I'm going to stay with it. And then he said, what the guy didn't know was I'm in the other political party.
The great Ross Porter and the Ross Porter Chronicles.
So fun.
Volume 1 is out. Ross, we got to ask you your perspective. You've been watching the Dodgers in this modern time when back-to-back World Series, first time the franchise all the way back to Brooklyn and the Superbas have won back-to-back titles. What do you make of this modern Dodger baseball era and how much joy they're bringing to the Southern California area?
Well, they've really done it in a great way, Petros. They've brought along the young guys. I really thought they were in trouble this year when all of those pitchers went down. And I thought, there's no way they can get through the playoffs with all those guys down. They can't count on the bullpen like they did last year. Well, you know what happened. Those 4 starting pitchers gave up nothing in a couple of those series, and they got to it. And then I thought they were in trouble where they had to win Games 6 and 7 in Toronto. But they just were able to be resilient and pull it out. And to their credit, they did a good job. I don't know Andrew Friedman. I've never met him, but I want to say it on his behalf. After last year, he went out and got the relief pitchers that he thought he needed. And because they got hurt and didn't do the job, it's not his fault. I thought he did a good job of preparing them.
Last one, Ross, and again, the book is fantastic. We can't recommend it enough, the Ross Porter Chronicles. You mentioned the next volume is going to have the likes of Willie Mays, Johnny Bench. You know what people are saying after these last 2 World Series championships, Shohei Ohtani, and they've been saying it for a while, the best player they've ever seen play baseball and will go down as the greatest player to have ever played baseball. What he did in the postseason with that one particular game against Milwaukee was just ridiculous. How about you? Who was, maybe it's your favorite, or who you thought was the best player you ever saw play baseball?
Buddy, I really couldn't. I've been asked that a lot. And what I have said is the best hitter I think I ever saw was Tony Gwynn, because he won 8 National League batting titles. He had the great ability to go the other way and get base hits. Played with one team for, 20 years. Now, I say that, and on the other hand, I have to say this. There was no interleague baseball in those days, so I didn't see George Brett, and I didn't see good hitters Wade Boggs like that in the other league. So that's not fair to say, I guess. Pitching wise, I don't know. There were so many good ones that it would be hard to say. Nolan Ryan had 7 no-hitters. I mean, that's unbelievable. And the Dodgers had excellent pitching, as they did so many years. So Vin told me the best player he ever saw was Willie Mays. And I didn't get to see Willie. Well, I guess, I didn't. He was gone by the time I got there in 77.
The one and only Ross Porter, the Ross Porter Chronicles. When the next volume comes out, you got to call us. RossPorterSports.com is where you can find the book. It is an excellent piece of literature, especially if you love the Dodgers. It's also on Amazon. Everybody knows how to get books on Amazon, from Ted Williams with Mike Piazza and a video component to Vin Scully to Sandy Koufax to Scioscia. You can't miss with this if you love the Dodgers, and who better than to tell these stories than Ross Porter, one of our great links to the past and the greatness of the Dodgers in Southern California and the greatness of the Dodgers right now. Ross, God bless you, and thank you for this.
Thank you so much, and I got to ask you, Petros, how your dad is.
He's doing well. Thank you for asking. He's doing great, and he sends his best. And congratulations on that big Sooners win in Tuscaloosa on Saturday,
wow.
Ross.
Wow. After beating them in Tennessee.
That's right.
That's exactly right.
God bless you, Ross, and have a wonderful night. Our best to you and your family.
You did a good job. I saw you in a couple games this year.
Trying my best.
Always good to talk to you, too. Thank you, guys.
Appreciate you, Ross. Thank you.
The great Ross Porter. Ladies and gentlemen, the Ross Porter Chronicles, Volume 1. Volume 2 is going to come out and hit you right in the head, too. Secret Textoso is coming up next.